Hey everybody, welcome back to Uncle Skinny Reviews. I am Uncle Skinny, your host, and you are watching Uncle Skinny Reviews, the #1 YouTube channel on YouTube. And we are trending as always, and I want to thank the Uncle Skinny family for making that happen. Couldn't have done it without you. As you can see, I am just as red as a lobster. And I'll get into the story. Basically, the rehab facility thought it would be a nice outing for us, the residents, to go to the beach. 90 degrees out, not a cloud in the sky. It was sunny. What a great beach day. Well, apparently I had wandered off and fell asleep with my face up. And it took about 3 hours until somebody found me, at which point my whole body was covered in severe burns, as you can see. That being said, burned all over my body except for my arms and my chest because of this turtleneck, which I believe saved my life. The nurses, however, told me that I had passed out because of dehydration, and the turtleneck in the 90-degree weather may have been a factor to that. I disagree, and I think, once again, my favorite shirt, my only shirt, has come in handy and saved my life. That being said, we are in severe pain. This is extremely painful. My body feels like my Aunt Ruth's leather handbag. It feels leathery. So please send your thoughts, your prayers, or money. I am always accepting money, always. So you can always do that. And yeah, the silver lining is the nurse told me that once I start to peel, I'll look like Freddy Krueger. And I said, hey, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's a 9 out of 10 for me, Uncle Skinny. So I thought, what a beautiful moment that we were able to tie something like this into the movies, which are so important. Speaking of the movies, today's movie is The Vast of Night. Came out in 2020, directed by Andrew Patterson, and it is available to stream on Amazon Prime. The Vast of Night tells the story of local disc jockey Everett and his cohort Faye, who is the switchboard operator. Cut that out because I'm a motorcycle jackass. The Vast of Night tells the story of a quaint town in New Mexico in the 1950s and follows our main characters Everett, who's the local radio personality, and his cohort Faye, the switchboard operator. A strange, mysterious signal comes through the radio waves, and in a quest to find the origin, they play it on the air to garner a little attention and search for some clues. And upon getting some clues, this mysterious sound leads them on a quest to find its origins, which is just out of this world. This is a UFO story, essentially, but a UFO story that... fucking motorcycle. So essentially, this is a UFO story. The movie opens up with this old-timey TV set, something from the 50s or 60s when this movie takes place. A black and white program called Paradox Theater, and it has this Rod Serling. It's totally a tip of the hat to the Twilight Zone. It has this Rod Serling sounding voice narrating about the existential conflicts of man in the universe, his place in the universe, and then the television program begins. At that point, we're immersed into the program, and it becomes the movie. It becomes this town in New Mexico where there's a big basketball game being set up, and everybody in the town's going, because in a small town in the 50s, that's what you do. You go to the big basketball game at the local high school. Except for Everett and Faye, who are doing their jobs, doing the switchboard operating job, and, being a local radio personality. First and foremost, I love the Twilight Zone. Rod Serling is a certified genius, and the original Twilight Zone run is probably one of the most treasured pieces of media that I think exists. It certainly has influenced me in my taste for science fiction and horror, and sort of that existential themes of man's place in the universe. And at various points in this movie, including the beginning and at the end, and briefly in between, we're drawn out of the movie, we're drawn out of the actions of Everett and Faye, back to this television set, which has this very meta appeal. It's very sort of surreal. I don't want to use the word breaking the fourth wall. I'm not sure that that's exactly accurate, but we're taken out of the movie and almost reminded of the fact that we're watching a movie or a television program, whatever it may be, which stylistically is very interesting. I'm not too sure if there's too much substance behind it. Perhaps there is. It's something I haven't really chewed on as much just yet, but I think there might be something there, and I think it's a very interesting stylistic choice. Right off the bat in this movie, we're treated to a lot of flourishing camera work, mainly these vast tracking shots that seem endless. Honestly, for a minute, I thought that the whole movie was going to be entirely composed of these long, vast tracking shots. Not only that, but I don't know if it's a New Mexico thing or a 1950s thing, but everybody's talking incredibly fast. And our main character, who, it's the 50s, he's always smoking, and the cigarette hanging out of his mouth has this garbled, mumbled effect, so that it is very hard to digest right off the bat. A lot of things are happening. However, the movie definitely slows down and settles into itself. And once it does that, it really opens itself up to a lot of different stylistic choices. The whole kind of breaking the fourth wall, which I talked about before, a lot of other flourishing, dramatic camera work that's besides tracking shots. I mean, we're talking about some other really cool pans, some really great shots, great angles. The lighting is exceptional. The sound design is really cool, and it has at different moments this sort of retro psychedelic rock thing going on, like George Harrison sitar kind of stuff, but it works within the movie and doesn't kind of feel outside of where we are and when we are. The dialogue is really, really cool and definitely drives the story forward. I would say that above anything else, what's really interesting is what drives the plot in this movie isn't really so much action as much as it's narrative. Another aspect of this movie that I feel like needs to be talked about a little bit is we have a lot of this dramatic, dizzying camera work, like I had previously mentioned. But in between that, you have scenes in which the camera is fixed, it's one shot, and it's on somebody talking for like 10, 15 minutes straight of just a camera, one shot, fixed position, talking. Now, ordinarily, I would say that's a horrible move for any director to make. It's a recipe for disaster and how boring you can possibly be. However, the dialogue is compelling and it drives the narrative. So we are there and we're compelled to watch it, and it moves us forward into the story. It is just kind of interesting to me that for a movie that does have a lot of technical capabilities, especially in its flourishing camera work, it then kind of almost takes this turn in saying, now we're going to sit this and it's going to be still and it's going to be this one shot fixed camera position for like an extended amount of time. But I think it kind of works. It almost has a podcast effect where now you can settle in, you can almost rest and relax. You don't have to go through this dizzying sort of exercise, and you can take in the narrative, and then your rest is up and you can proceed to go forward into the night, into the vast of night, to follow where the story leads. I think all these choices are really, really great. I think they're very powerful. I think they're very effective. The next aspect of this film that I'd like to talk about is the fact that it is a UFO story. Of course, these kind of stories are well tread in sci-fi, horror, drama. We get the mythos, we get the lore of the UFO story. However, I cannot stress enough how much I appreciate the interpretation in the way that this movie presents the UFO mythos. In this movie, the aliens or the UFO contain such mystery. We're not actually, we don't really understand any of it throughout the entire movie. It's still this mystical entity, and it never really is given away to us, except for perhaps the end may be a bit on the nose. But that being said, throughout the whole movie, we don't really see it. We just kind of hear about it. which really is an effective way of building tension. The other thing I appreciate about this movie is that, the aliens here aren't trying to destroy mankind. It's not about us versus them. Rather, it's about us versus the mystery and phenomena of the world. And it is non-threatening. And it revels in the mysticism of the UFO phenomenon, rather than this is something we need to shoot down and destroy. It is what is going on. And there's something so enchanting and magical about that. I love UFO stories that don't have to deal with this big threat against mankind that has to resort to physical violence or conflict. Rather, I think the fact that aliens exist is enough to be fantastic, enough to tell a great story, a mystical story, and that's what this movie does. It isn't about the threat, it's just about the mysticism of the phenomenon. And I love that kind of stuff. I think it's heavily effective, and I think ultimately it makes for an exceptional summer movie. This is the kind of movie I like to watch during the summer. Go outside, look at the sky. This is a summertime movie that I can't recommend highly enough, especially if you're into UFOs, into sci-fi. Great summer movie, and for that I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think we're going to give it an 8 out of 10 from Uncle Skinny. The Vast of Night, certainly entertaining. I think and it's appropriate and can be entertaining for people of all ages, of all different tastes. You don't even have to necessarily be a horror or sci-fi fan. I think it is enchanting enough to captivate all different kinds of audiences. So I recommend The Vast of Night, 8 out of 10 from Uncle Skinny. Well, gang, that is all from me this week. It's been a pleasure, as always. Again, please send your prayers and your thoughts, and perhaps a donation of any size would be acceptable to me. Because, this isn't fun. And, I tried to take a shower the other day, and the steaming water just, I almost just threw up from the pain. So, we'll see you next week, and I hope I'm looking a lot better and feeling a lot better. So thanks, Uncle Skinny family. Take care, and please always send your recommendations and like and subscribe and all that bullshit. Thank you.